Margaret called out to Mrs. Joan, her mother-in-law, as she approached her food cart in a bustling Chicago street market. Margaret smiled, assuming her mother-in-law was there to help or simply visit. "You stop by, Mom? Want some dumplings?" she offered warmly to Mrs. Joan, but Mrs. Joan only grimaced, as if repulsed by the entire place and the food Margaret was selling. "No, I don't eat dirty, cheap food, Margaret. I just came here with my son and future daughter-in-law," she said sharply. Mrs. Joan's words cut through the air, and soon Margaret's husband, Brian, approached with a new woman by his side, the one Mrs. Joan referred to as the new daughter-in-law. Margaret's brow furrowed as she observed the trio's reactions. "Daughter-in-law? But aren't I your daughter-in-law?" she asked, confused. "Yes, that's right, but that was then. Things are different now," Mrs. Joan replied with a smirk, gesturing toward Brian and the woman. Brian grinned arrogantly as he responded, "We're here, Mom." Margaret grew even more bewildered. "Honey, who's that with you?" she asked, her forehead creasing. The woman beside Brian eyed her from head to toe, clinging to him like a vine wrapped around a tree. Mrs. Joan wasted no time introducing the woman. "This is Erica Montgomery, the controversial daughter of the most respected family in the country, the Montgomery clan. She's the missing daughter who completes their 5 siblings. She's in love with my son. So I'm sorry to say, Margaret, you need to sign these annulment papers. Don't stand in the way of my son's bright future. Sign it now and don't drag this out," she commanded sharply, tossing the annulment papers at Margaret. Margaret paused, unsure whether to feel relieved or furious at her mother-in-law's words. She turned to Brian, wanting him to explain. "Brian?" she asked softly. Instead of showing guilt or hesitation, Brian responded with a smug grin. "Mum's right. I'm done with you, Margaret. I'm tired of your daily grind that never once gave me a comfortable life. This dumpling cart of yours? It's going nowhere. But with Erica, my wealth is guaranteed. So stop making this hard and just sign the papers so we can leave," he said arrogantly. Margaret knew deep down that Brian had always seen her as a means to an end, not a wife. They'd only been married 3 months, and she'd only agreed to marry him for her own deep-seated reasons. She thought Brian was different back then, but she'd learned he was just pretending. Once they lived under the same roof with his mother and sister-in-law, his true colors showed. Margaret stared at Brian's face, seeing no trace of remorse. "Why does this all seem so easy for you? I thought you loved me. That's why I married you, isn't it? You got down on one knee and begged me. But just because you're greedy for wealth, it's okay to hurt people? I'm your wife, Brian, so why do you treat me like a dog?" she shouted. At that moment, the woman with them, Eunice, chimed in. "Stop with the drama and your long-winded whining. Of course Brian would choose me. I bring him comfort, not just a dumpling cart. So sign those papers. I don't want to stay in this smelly, humid, filthy place any longer," she said to Margaret, her face contorted in disgust. Margaret seemed not to hear Eunice's words, her gaze still fixed on Brian. For the last time she asked him, "Did you ever really love me, Brian?" she said seriously, tears welling in her eyes. "Can you just—" Brian began, but Margaret cut him off. "Answer me. Did you love me?" she demanded loudly, just as a sharp slap landed on her cheek from Mrs. Joan. "You have no right to yell at my son, you wretched woman," Mrs. Joan bellowed. Gasping, Margaret glared at the 3 of them, holding her stinging cheek. "Mark my words. The moment I sign this, I'll make sure you regret what you've done to me," she threatened. She picked up the annulment papers from the ground, grabbed a pen, and signed them, officially ending her marriage to Brian. "If you're just going to sign it, why all the chatter? Let's go, honey," Brian said angrily, wrapping his arms around Eunice's waist and turning away, leaving Margaret behind as if she were nothing more than a rag. Before Mrs. Joan left, she issued one final warning. "Don't ever bother my son again," she said menacingly. Margaret couldn't deny that she had grown to love Brian. When she was in need of support and a place to stay, Brian was the first to help and accept her. But over time, he changed, and she realized that he and his mother were nothing but opportunists after her money. Instead of wallowing in sadness, she let it go and dismissed the ungrateful pair. Few months ago, the Montgomery family was abuzz with news about their missing daughter. "Everyone's looking for the Montgomerys' only daughter now. Why did she run away? Maybe she got bored of being rich," Brian mused, lounging on the couch in their small Chicago apartment, watching the news. Margaret walked in, carrying a coffee for her husband. Instead of being served after a long day at her dumpling cart, she was the one catering to Brian, who did nothing but laze around. "Here's your coffee, honey," she said sweetly, handing it to him. Brian took it without looking away from the TV. "Thanks, babe," he muttered, eyes glued to the screen. Margaret sat beside him. "What are you watching, honey?" she asked, glancing at the TV. "They're searching for the Montgomerys' runaway daughter. Still haven't found her. If there's a reward, I might start looking myself. She kinda looks like you, babe, but, more refined," Brian said, glancing at her. Margaret raised an eyebrow, sensing he was implying she didn't look polished. "Wow, really? What's wrong with how I look?" she asked, half joking. Brian quickly backpedaled, flashing a charming smile. "Of course you're the most beautiful woman I've ever met, and so hard-working," he flattered her. Margaret chuckled. "Oh, stop with the sweet talk." But Brian swiftly changed the subject to his real agenda. "Hey, babe, got any cash? I was thinking of trying my luck at the poker game again. You never know, I might hit it big," he said boldly, his eyes pleading. Margaret hesitated, knowing the money she had was for restocking her cart. "Honey, this is for buying more supplies for the cart. And didn't Lewis offer you a job? Why not try it so we can both earn?" she suggested gently, with no ill intent. But Brian's mother, Mrs. Joan, overheard and reacted sharply. "Hey, Margaret, what are you saying? You want my son to slave away? I don't even let him wash dishes or do laundry, and you want him to work like a servant? You're the one with the business, so you should provide for him. If you'd gone to college, maybe you could have supported us all. Don't force my Brian to work, especially with his heart condition. If anything happens to him, I'll blame you. Just give him the money he's asking for. He shares his winnings with you, doesn't he?" she scolded. Margaret had been the breadwinner since their marriage, paying bills, buying groceries, giving allowances to Brian's sister, Lila, and settling their debts. Brian hadn't worked at all, supposedly because of his heart condition, which his mother used to excuse his laziness. Mrs. Joan never sided with Margaret, clearly disliking her. Margaret let it slide, valuing her marriage to Brian above all else. Instead of arguing, she pulled money from her purse and handed it to Brian to avoid further conflict. "Here, honey. Sorry, I don't have much extra. If I don't have enough for supplies, I can't sell, and we'll lose our income," she said, worried. But Brian, instead of being grateful, snapped. "Ugh! Enough with the lectures. If I win, I'll pay you back," he said angrily, storming out. Once he was gone, Mrs. Joan turned on Margaret. "Hey, don't upset my son. You know he can't get stressed with his condition. Just give him the money without all the nagging. That's why I can't stand you. You're always guilt-tripping him," she lectured. Margaret stayed silent, respecting her mother-in-law, despite the unfair treatment. Later, Margaret returned to her dumpling cart in the market. "Fresh dumplings, come get yours," she called out, arranging her goods. She jumped when a loud voice spoke in front of her cart. "Hi, Margaret, it's been a while." "Wow, your dumpling cart looks steady," said Donna, an old friend who now worked in New York. Margaret smiled. Hey, Donna, steady? If it was, I'd be rich by now. How about you? You look like you're doing great in New York, she asked eagerly. My boss is kind, unlike my old ones, and the pay's decent so I can save a bit. But you, why's Brian still jobless? Where is he? Why isn't he helping you here? Donna replied, shifting the topic. Margaret sighed. You're gonna guess he's at the poker game again, aren't you? She said, in a tired tone. Donna scratched her head. She'd always opposed Margaret's rushed relationship with Brian, knowing he was a lazy mama's boy. Seriously, Margaret, how long are you gonna play the fool for that husband of yours? A mama's boy, lazy as hell, living with his freeloading mom and sister, and you're supporting them all? My God, it's 2025. Martyrs and idiots in love are out of style. When will you wake up? She said, exasperated. Donna, I get it, but Brian can't work because of his heart condition. It's dangerous, and when he's home, he takes care of me in his own way so I can manage. Plus, I know my business will grow with a bit more effort, Margaret explained, defending her husband. Donna wasn't convinced. Margaret, let me remind you, there's a difference between a devoted wife and a foolish one. You might be confused, don't you see? She said sharply, not caring if it hurt Margaret, just wanting her to snap out of it. You're harsh, Donna. Let it go. Maybe one day Brian will wake up and be hard-working. If I give up, I won't see that change, Margaret replied, full of hope. Donna shook her head, believing Brian would never change, especially with his enabling mother. Margaret, a man changes on his own when he truly loves someone. If Brian hasn't, maybe he doesn't love you, she said sincerely. Margaret remained optimistic, determined to make Brian love her. Well, if he doesn't, I'll do everything to make him, she said confidently, frustrating Donna further. Ugh, I can't deal with a lazy guy hiding behind his mom's skirt. Just pack me some dumplings for my nieces, Donna said, giving up. Margaret smiled. Sure thing, madam, she replied playfully. Donna had her reasons for her stance, but not every woman was like her. Some, like Donna, wouldn't tolerate a husband like Brian, lazy, a gambler, and a mama's boy. For Donna, it was fine to submit to a man who provided, was kind, and respected her. Others, like Margaret, were brilliant but foolish in love, blindly hoping for change despite the pain, choosing to stick with their decisions. Meanwhile, at the Montgomery mansion in a wealthy Chicago suburb, Don Philip gathered his 4 sons, Ryan, Lucas, Gavin, and Dylan, for a meeting. Ryan, Lucas, Gavin, Dylan, any news on Eunice? He asked sternly. Eunice was their only sister, missing for months with no clear reason for running away. Their family was close, so her disappearance baffled them, except for one secret they'd kept from her. We're still looking, Dad, Ryan, the eldest, replied seriously, inheriting his father's strict demeanor but remaining approachable. Gavin, the charming ladies' man of the 4, spoke next. My team's searched every state she might have gone to. She's not active on social media, but we're still trying to track her online, he said confidently. Lucas, the tech-savvy one, added, My team scoured the internet, even hacking if needed, but no leads yet. Don Philip turned to Dylan, the quietest of the 4. And you, Dylan? Any progress? He asked. Nothing yet, Dylan replied curtly. Don sighed, frustrated that none had good news. She's been gone for months, and all our wealth can't find her. I'm sure she's struggling. That girl means the world to me. My best friend entrusted her to me before he died. I'll never forgive myself if something happens to her, he said gravely. The secret was that Eunice was adopted, entrusted to the Montgomerys by their former employee, Fred, who might be why she left without a word. But how could she know if no one told her? Dylan, the closest to Eunice, spoke up. I know her. She's strong and brave, used to hardship. Wherever she is, she's in a good situation, he said confidently, though worry gnawed at him. How can you be so sure, Dylan? Don asked, raising an eyebrow. I just feel it, Dylan replied. Don ended the meeting. If you get any leads, let me know immediately. I'm entrusting this to you so I hope you have better news next time, he said, and they all agreed. Sure, Dad. After Don left, the brothers stayed in the office. Be honest, have you really not found Eunice? Gavin asked. Not yet, Ryan said. Same here, Lucas added. Their eyes turned to Dylan. Like I said, that's it, Dylan said seriously. They knew Dylan was the last to speak with Eunice before she ran away, and they wanted to know what happened that night. You were the last to talk to her. Did she vent? Did she say where she was going? Why did she leave so suddenly? What did you say to her? Ryan pressed. Gavin added, Yeah, what happened, Dylan? Dylan, avoiding this topic, grew defensive. Why are you interrogating me? You think I'm hiding something? He snapped. Gavin tried to calm him. Chill, we're just asking. But Dylan stood up. Asking is different from accusing, he said, storming out. The others exchanged glances and shrugged. Meanwhile, Margaret was anxious because Brian hadn't returned home. Have you seen Brian? It's 6 p.m., and he's been gone since noon, she asked Mrs. Jones, worried. Mrs. Jones scowled. Do you see him here? She snapped. Margaret lowered her gaze. Not yet, she said softly. She was just asking, but her mother-in-law's harsh tone made her feel worthless. Then he's not here. Learn to wait. He won't come back until he wins. You probably upset him earlier with your nagging, but you gave him the money anyway, Mrs. Jones said dismissively. Moments later, Lila, Brian's sister, emerged from her room. Is there food yet, Mom? I'm starving, she whined, acting like a princess who expected to be spoon-fed. Since she wasn't addressing Margaret, Margaret stayed silent. Mrs. Jones turned to her. You heard her. Where's our dinner? Don't tell me it's dumplings again. You're gonna make us sick of them. I saw you had plenty of customers earlier, she taunted, pointing at Margaret. You saw that? Why didn't you help me then? Margaret asked calmly. Mrs. Jones' ears flared and she glared at her. Excuse me, who do you think you're talking to? I'm your mother-in-law, and mothers-in-law aren't supposed to work or get tired. I should be living like a queen, but you're too stingy and selfish. Keep your cart to yourself. Go buy us some food. We're hungry. Stop standing there preaching, she ranted, storming off. No matter what Margaret did, no matter how much kindness she showed, or how foolish she seemed, her husband's family never accepted her. She began to feel disillusioned with her sacrifices for them. That night, Brian came home at 10 p.m. while Margaret was already asleep. Mrs. Jones was waiting outside, always enabling her son. Hey, Mom, Brian said softly, entering the apartment excitedly, as if something big had happened. Mrs. Jones stood to greet him. Son, why are you so late? Where were you? Good thing I put Margaret in her place so she went to bed early. Anyway, where were you? You look exhausted, she said, curious. Brian took a deep breath. Mom, we're gonna be rich, he said, thrilled. Mrs. Jones' eyes widened. Rich? What do you mean? She stammered, money always grabbing her attention. I met a woman today. She kept looking at me like she was into me. Then I found out she's the missing Montgomery daughter, Eunice. She's ready to return to her family, and she's taking me with her. I'll be part of the Montgomery clan, Mom, Brian explained, buzzing with excitement. Mrs. Jones could hardly believe it, though she wanted to. Are you sure, son? Are you certain she's Eunice Montgomery? She asked, needing confirmation to avoid disappointment. Yes, Mom, it's her. She looks just like the girl on TV. The Montgomerys don't release clear photos to avoid imposters, but I met her at a bar. She's the real Eunice, and in a day, she's going to the Montgomerys with me," Brian said confidently. "I want to meet her. Wait, what about that nag of a wife of yours?" Mrs. Joan asked, suddenly remembering Margaret. "Easy, Mom. We'll force her to sign the annulment papers, whether she likes it or not. I've made up my mind. I should be the one marrying Eunice. We need to wed quickly, so when she introduces me to her family, I'm already her husband with rights to her and her wealth," Brian schemed. He felt no love for Margaret, making it easy to discard her. Mrs. Jones' face lit up with joy. She was already imagining what to buy and build, even without meeting Eunice. For her and Brian, anyone who brought wealth was valuable, and Margaret was now irrelevant. "What wonderful news, son. I knew you'd change our luck. Too bad you married that unlucky Margaret. Good thing we'll be free of her curse," she said, elated. "Right, Mom. And is it my fault I'm so handsome? Even rich women chase me," Brian bragged. Mrs. Joan patted him, beaming. "That's my boy. I'm so proud of you, even if you're a freeloader," she teased. Brian winced. "Ouch, Mom," he said, clutching his chest playfully. "Tomorrow I want to meet this Eunice and see a real rich person," Mrs. Jones said. The next day, unable to sleep from excitement, they woke early and dressed up to meet Eunice Montgomery. When Margaret woke, she was shocked to see them so dressed up. "Honey, why are you all dolled up? You too, Mom? Are we going somewhere? Don't tell me you're finally applying for a job," she asked, half joking. Mrs. Jones snapped, "Excuse me, Margaret. If you're going to mock my son, stop it. When we return, I'm sure you'll be crying," she threatened, grabbing her bag and pulling Brian out. "Let's go, son," she said sharply, ignoring Margaret's questions. When did she start calling him son? Margaret wondered, shaking her head. To avoid stress, she got ready and headed to her cart. That evening, after a busy day with many customers, Mrs. Joan arrived at the cart, one eyebrow raised and arms crossed. "Margaret!" she called out. Margaret smiled, thinking her mother-in-law might help or visit. "You stopped by, Mom? Want some dumplings?" she offered, but Mrs. Jones scowled as if disgusted by the place and food. "No, I don't eat dirty, cheap food, Margaret. I just came with my son and future daughter-in-law," she said coldly. Brian and the new woman approached, the one Mrs. Joan called her new daughter-in-law. Margaret's brow furrowed at their reactions. "Daughter-in-law? But I'm your daughter-in-law, aren't I?" she asked, confused. "Yes, but that was then. It's different now," Mrs. Joan replied with a grin, calling Brian and the woman. "We're here, Mum," Brian said arrogantly, smirking. Margaret grew more confused. "Honey, who's that with you?" she asked, frowning. The woman eyed her from head to toe, clinging to Brian like a snake. Mrs. Joan introduced her. "This is Eunice Montgomery, the controversial daughter of the most respected family in the country, the Montgomery clan. She's the missing daughter who completes their 5 siblings. She's in love with my son, Brian. So, I'm sorry, Margaret, but you need to sign these annulment papers. Don't block my son's bright future. Sign it now and don't delay," she ordered, throwing the papers at Margaret. Margaret hesitated, torn between relief and anger. She looked at Brian, wanting his explanation. "Brian?" she asked. Instead of guilt, Brian responded smugly. "Mom's right. I'm done with you, Margaret. I'm sick of your daily grind that never gave me comfort. Your dumpling cart? It's a dead end. But with Eunice, I'm set to get rich. So don't make this harder. Sign the papers so we can go," he said arrogantly. Margaret knew Brian had always seen her as a tool, not a wife. They'd been married only 3 months, and she'd married him for her own reasons, believing he was different. But living with his mother and sister revealed his true, opportunistic nature. Staring at Brian's remorseless face, Margaret asked, "Why is this so easy for you?" "I thought you loved me," That's why I married you. You begged me on one knee, but because of your greed, it's okay to hurt people. I'm your wife, Brian, so why treat me like a dog? She yelled. Eunice interjected. Stop the theatrics and your long rants. Of course Brian chose me. I bring him comfort, not just dumplings. Sign those papers. I don't want to stay in this stinky, sweaty place, she said, grimacing. Margaret ignored Eunice, her eyes on Brian. Did you ever really love me, Brian? She asked, tears forming. Can you? Brian started, but Margaret cut in. Answer me! Did you love me? She shouted, just as Mrs. Jones slapped her hard. You have no right to yell at my son, you filthy woman, she roared. Gasping, Margaret glared at them, clutching her cheek. Remember this, once I sign, I'll make you regret what you've done, she vowed. She picked up the papers, signed them, and ended her marriage to Brian. If you're signing anyway, why all the talk? Let's go, honey, Brian said, wrapping his arms around Eunice and walking away, leaving Margaret like trash. Before leaving, Mrs. Jones warned, Don't bother my son again. Margaret couldn't deny her love for Brian, who had helped her when she needed it most. But as time passed, she saw his and his mother's true opportunistic nature, chasing only money. Instead of grieving, she let them go. As they left with the new woman, Lila approached to taunt Margaret. So you're not my sister-in-law anymore? Good, because I never liked you. I'm glad my brother came to his senses. It's embarrassing to tell my school friends my brother's wife is just a dumpling vendor. You, my new sister-in-law, is way better. You're nothing compared to her. I'm so excited to meet the famous Montgomery bachelors. I can't wait, she said, flailing her hands dramatically. Margaret rolled her eyes, ignoring Lila's childish jabs. Lila grabbed some dumplings from the cart and threw them at Margaret. Here's your dumplings. Choke on them, she sneered. Margaret, done with their nonsense, grabbed Lila's arm tightly and glared. Try insulting my business again, and you'll regret it. Remember, I'm no longer your brother's wife or your sister-in-law, so I have no reason to be nice to you, she said fiercely. Lila raised her hand to slap her, but a man's voice shouted, Stop! It was Ryan, Lucas, Gavin, and Dylan, who had finally tracked Margaret down with their hired agents. Margaret and Lila turned, Margaret's eyes widening at the four men, while Lila was starstruck, nearly drooling. Oh my gosh, the Montgomery boys! I knew Eunice would come rescue me. She's the best sister-in-law. You're in trouble now. Lila squealed, trying to free herself from Margaret's grip to approach them. But Gavin shouted, Get lost, or I'll slap you myself. Stunned, Lila tried to speak, but Gavin yelled again, Scram! And she fled. With Lila gone, the brothers turned to Margaret. Dylan leaned against their car. Hi, sister. Long time no see. Did you miss us? Lucas teased, chuckling. Instead of smiling, Margaret frowned. Why are you here? You still found me? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Of course. Don't forget. We're Montgomerys. No one escapes us, Ryan said confidently. Margaret rolled her eyes. I'm not coming with you. I have my own life now, so leave me alone, she snapped, standing firm. The three exchanged glances, then Gavin smirked. Oh, we can't let that happen. Why did you leave without a word? Did we do something? What happened? He asked. Margaret glanced at Dylan, who seemed indifferent, then looked down. Nothing, just go. I'm not Eunice anymore. I'm Margaret, she said curtly. The three frowned. Margaret! Where'd you get that name? And this business of yours? Nice setup. You're a great cook, but you don't need to do this. You're coming with us, like it or not, Ryan said, signaling his brothers. They stepped forward, Ryan and Gavin grabbing Margaret's arms despite her protests. Wait, what are you doing? I don't want to go, she shouted, but they forced her into the car and drove off. Back at the Montgomery mansion, Don Philip greeted them with a smile, having missed his adopted daughter, now Margaret. "Eunice!" he exclaimed, arms open to hug her. But Margaret's expression showed no excitement, only resentment. "It's Margaret. I'm not using that name anymore," she said coldly. Don paused, but his longing for her outweighed the tension. He hugged her anyway. "Margaret, I missed you so much. Why did you disappear like that? You worried us sick. Where were you? Did anyone hurt you?" he asked, full of concern. "Dad, or Don Philip, tell me the truth so I can understand. Who am I really? Am I truly your daughter?" Margaret asked directly, addressing her identity. Don sensed she knew something, making her departure clearer. "Magnolia," he began, unsure where to start. "Please don't lie to me. Tell me the truth so I know how to move forward in this house and your world," she pleaded, determined to know her true self. "I had a feeling that's why I left without a word. Am I right?" she asked seriously. Don nodded. "Yes, why hide it now? You're not a Montgomery. I had a close friend, Fred, who managed my farm in Ohio. He earned my trust, so I put him in charge of other farms across states. He wasn't just an employee. I saw him as a brother." "Fred was your father, Margaret. He raised you alone after your mother died, giving birth to you. When Fred died of a serious illness, he entrusted you to me, asking me to take you in as my own. Out of gratitude for his loyalty, I adopted you and treated you as my daughter. I know you're angry we kept this from you, and I'm sorry." "Please forgive me," Don explained. The brothers had planned to keep this secret, but since Margaret knew and because of past events, they confessed. Margaret, stunned, asked, "So we're not related by blood?" Don nodded. "Yes, dear." Margaret took a deep breath, looking down, then up at them. "I understand now. I'm sorry for my rash decisions. It won't happen again," she said, apologizing. Her understanding nature helped her accept the truth quickly. She was an orphan, and she owed the Montgomerys a great debt, so she had no reason to stay angry. The next day, life returned to normal. Margaret, now polished and far from her market days, was back in the mansion. While working in the office, sorting company files, she was interrupted by a knock. "Sir Ryan, hi Margaret, want an apple? I'll peel it for you," Ryan offered, smiling. Now that they knew Margaret wasn't related, the brothers seized the chance to flirt. Margaret set down her pen, smiling. "Ryan, they say the nutrients are in the skin. I'm fine and can peel my own apple. Don't worry about me," she said kindly. Ryan scratched his head. "All right, but if you need anything, just say so," he said gentlemanly. "Thanks, Ryan," she replied, smiling. Soon after Ryan left, another knock came. "Hi, Margaret. I ordered a stuffed toy, but it's not my style, so it's yours," Gavin said, holding a human-sized toy. It was an excuse. He'd bought it for her. Each brother had their own way of vying for her attention. Margaret laughed, knowing Gavin wasn't into such things. "Since when do you like stuffed toys, Gavin? If it's for your girlfriends, I'd believe you. You're the biggest flirt of the four," she teased. Gavin scratched his head, laughing. "Wow, you've been gone a while and now you're bullying me," Margaret chuckled. "I'm not bullying you, just stating facts," she teased further. "I'm a good boy now," Gavin insisted. "Really? A good boy with only 3 girlfriends instead of 5? She teased. Margaret stopped, not wanting to distract from her work. "Kidding aside, leave the toy there. Thanks," she said. Gavin nodded. "All right, bye, Margaret," he said, leaving. Moments later, another knock. "Come in," Margaret called. Lucas entered. "Hi," he greeted, smiling oddly. Margaret sensed something strange with the brothers' behavior. "Lucas, what's up? You 3 are acting too nice," she said, curious. Lucas grinned, hyping them up. "We're always nice, only Dylan's the grumpy one," Then he got to his point. "Anyway, you free this weekend?" he asked. Margaret sensed he was about to invite her out, like the others. "I'm free Sunday. Why?" she replied. "Can you come with me to a pet shop? I want to buy a dog," Lucas said, shyly. He wasn't used to asking women out. Usually they approached him. Margaret, knowing Lucas was allergic to furry animals, raised an eyebrow. "You're allergic to pets, aren't you?" she asked. Lucas looked away, blushing. "Oh, right. I mean, I want one for the gate, for security," he stammered. Margaret, seeing through their antics, played along. "Weird, but sure, I'll go," she said. Lucas shouted, "Yes," loud enough for Ryan and Gavin, eavesdropping outside, to hear. "What?" Margaret asked, amused. "Nothing. Sunday, promise," Lucas said, thrilled, and left. After Lucas left, Margaret paused, staring at the door, half expecting another knock. She caught herself hoping Dylan would come, then laughed at the absurdity. Dylan was quiet and serious, not the type to flirt. Shaking her head, she returned to work. Hours later, needing a break, she stepped outside to the mansion's pool area, where the cool evening breeze relaxed her. She almost turned back, but froze. Dylan was there, playing his guitar. Not wanting Dylan to think she was avoiding him because of their past issue, Margaret, though nervous, approached and acted normal. Sitting near him, she greeted shyly. "Hi." "Hi," Dylan replied curtly. Relieved he responded, she avoided awkwardness. "You still play the guitar, huh?" she asked calmly, though internally mortified. She wasn't this shy with Ryan, Lucas, or Gavin, and wondered why Dylan made her tongue-tied. "Yes," Dylan said simply. Margaret scrambled for another question. "How've you been?" she asked. "I'm good. You?" he replied, turning the question back. "I'm okay," she stammered, wanting to bring up their past but unsure how. Before she could, the three brothers burst in. "There you are. We've been looking for you," Gavin said. Dylan stood abruptly. "I have something to do," he said, leaving. The brothers exchanged looks. "What's his deal?" Ryan asked, shrugging. Margaret, feeling the awkwardness, decided to leave too. "I'm heading back to the office. See you guys," she said, walking away. The brothers, hoping to bond, were puzzled by the pair's behavior and shook their heads. Meanwhile, Brian, his mother, and the fake Eunice were in disarray as they prepared to meet Don Philip. "Eunice, I'm so excited to meet your family," Brian said, holding her hand tightly. Since Margaret signed the annulment, they planned to marry that same day. But Eunice grew nervous as they neared the Montgomery Corporation building, fearing her deception would be exposed. "I'm excited too, but you go in first. I'll follow, promise," she said, stuttering. Brian frowned. "Why? Come on, I'll look like an idiot if you're not with me," he insisted. Mrs. Jones chimed in. "Yeah, Eunice, we're here to meet the Montgomerys face to face." Before Eunice could respond, the pair dragged her toward the towering Montgomery Corporation building. At the entrance, they approached the security guard. "What do you need, sir?" the guard asked politely. Brian replied brashly, "Don't you recognize her?" "Eunice, my darling wife, talk to this guard." He pushed Eunice forward, believing the guard would recognize her as his boss. Eunice reluctantly approached, unable to hide her nervousness. The guard, amused, scanned her and stifled a laugh, knowing the real Eunice was already inside. "Let us in, please, because—" Eunice began, hesitating, knowing the guard sensed her lie. Mrs. Jones interrupted. "Just say it. Sir, this is Eunice Montgomery, the missing daughter of the Montgomerys, now my son's wife. Let us in. I want to meet my in-laws," she demanded. The guard, confused, said, "What are you talking about?" "Mom Eunice has been back for a while." Mrs. Jones' voice rose, drawing attention from nearby employees. "What? This is the real Eunice. Explain yourself. We're not liars, she shouted. Before the guard acted, he called Don Philip, who was upstairs with the family. The fake Eunice panicked, wanting to flee but frozen in place. "Hold on, Mom. I'll call the boss. They're all here," the guard said. "Good. When we meet them, you'll be sorry for disrespecting us," Mrs. Jones snapped. After the call, the guard let them in per Don's orders. "You can go in," he said politely. Mrs. Jones smirked, glaring at the guard. "You'll be the one sorry," she threatened, storming inside. A secretary escorted them to the office, where they were asked to sit. Margaret was in the bathroom, so they hadn't seen her yet. "Have a seat," Don said calmly. "Thank you, in-law," Mrs. Jones said, grinning. Don frowned, setting down his wine glass. "In-law?" he asked, puzzled. Mrs. Jones gave Eunice the spotlight to explain, but the intimidated fake Eunice faltered under the brothers' gazes. "Go on, Eunice, speak," Mrs. Jones urged. "Instead of claiming to be a Montgomery," Eunice confessed, tears streaming. "I'm sorry, but I'm not Eunice. I'm just a cashier at the poker game. I've liked you for a long time, so I pretended to be her to make you leave your wife and marry me," she sobbed. Brian and Mrs. Jones were stunned, unable to believe they'd been so easily fooled by her sweet words, blinded by greed. "What are you talking about?" Mrs. Jones stammered. Just then, Margaret entered, shocking the pair further. They couldn't fathom why a dumpling vendor was there, dressed in expensive clothes, looking refined and far from her old self. "Confused, Mrs. Jones?" Margaret asked, raising an eyebrow. "Margaret, what are you doing here?" Mrs. Jones demanded sharply. Don, displeased, pointed at her. "Watch your words. You have no right to raise your voice at my daughter. She's the real Eunice, and your companion is the imposter," he said firmly. Margaret smirked, rubbing it in. "I told you you'd regret what you did to me. Now you pay the price," she said, glaring at the pair, who still couldn't believe it. Don ended the meeting, ordering his staff to escort them out. "Get them out and ensure they never set foot in my office again," he commanded. "Yes, sir," his staff replied, forcibly removing the trio. Even outside, regret and disbelief were etched on their faces. Furious at Eunice for humiliating them, Mrs. Jones ordered Brian to dump her, leaving Eunice bitter for being discarded when she was no longer useful. Days later, with everything settled, the siblings decided to relax at their private island. "It's been a while since we came here, Margaret. I got you a bunch of mangoes," Ryan said. "Thanks, Ryan," Margaret replied. Lucas tried to impress her next. "This time, I'll teach you to swim, like I promised," he said sweetly. "Wow, thanks, Lucas," Margaret said, laughing, knowing he couldn't swim but playing along. "I've got your back. Need anything, just say," Gavin added. Margaret smiled. "Okay, Gavin." The brothers did everything to win her over, but the one she wanted attention from, Dylan, kept his distance, playing his guitar, alone by a hut. That evening, while the others prepared dinner, Margaret, feeling restless, decided to swim by the shore. Conservative, she wore a loose t-shirt and black leggings. "Might as well swim," she said, wading into the water, unaware Dylan was watching from a dark part of the beach. When the waves grew rough, Dylan panicked, unable to see her. Ryan shouted, "Margaret's drowning!" Before they could act, Dylan rushed in, saving her. On the shore, the brothers crowded around. "How is she?" Gavin asked. "I'm okay," Margaret said shakily, looking at Dylan. "Dylan," she whispered. He stared back, fear in his eyes. "Thank you," she said. After a moment, he looked away. "Next time, swim with someone. It's high tide. Dangerous," he said sternly, walking off. The brothers teased her, but her eyes followed Dylan, a small smile forming. The next morning, Margaret found Dylan by the shore and approached nervously. "Dylan, can we talk?" she asked. He didn't turn, staring at the ocean. "We're talking," he said. "I mean, about the past," she clarified. He faced her. "Margaret, you running away was answer enough. Sorry for startling you," he said. "I didn't know what to do, so I reacted by running without finding out the truth," she said sadly, regretting her choice. Dylan paused, admitting to himself he was affected, even jealous of his brother's attention to her. "So what's your plan? Why not give them a chance? They're clearly into you, especially since you're not blood-related," he said seriously. Margaret replied honestly, "I like them as brothers, not lovers." Dylan's brow furrowed. "Why not?" he asked. She looked away, then at him. "Because I meant it," she said, heart racing. Before she could finish, the brothers called, "Margaret, Dylan, dinner's ready." They sighed, their confession interrupted again, but this time they felt a shift. At dinner, the brothers fussed over her. "Here's mango, peeled for you," Ryan said. "Thank you," she replied. Lucas offered, "Here's some pork. Eat up." Dylan sat beside her quietly. "Guys, I can get my own food. Eat, my big brothers," she said gently. Ryan reacted. "Brothers? We're not siblings anymore," they all chimed in. "Yeah." Margaret clarified, "Even if we're not related, you're still my brothers." Gavin, noticing the tension, spoke up. "I see it, Margaret. We chase you, but you only want one guy, Dylan, right?" Margaret blushed. "Ren!" The brothers laughed, revealing they'd been teasing Dylan to push him to confess. "We knew Dylan liked you, since forever, but was too shy to admit it. We like you, Margaret, but we saw Dylan's grumpy face whenever we got close. So, Dylan, we were just making you jealous. Don't miss your chance now," Gavin explained. Dylan and Margaret were stunned by the twist. Dylan laughed. "You guys are nuts," he said, grateful. Seizing the moment, he turned to Margaret. "Can we start over? Can I prove myself to you?" he asked sincerely. Without hesitation, she said, "Yes." They kissed, their love finally out in the open. Back at the mansion, they told Don Philip. "Dad, Margaret and I are together. We love each other," Dylan said boldly. Don smiled. "I see no issue. I'm happy one of my sons is with Margaret. You have my blessing," he said, delighted. The brothers, eavesdropping, chimed in. "We're Montgomerys too." Dylan thanked them for their playful jealousy, and they all laughed. "You guys are ridiculous," Margaret said, smiling. "But seriously, we're happy for you. You deserve each other," Ryan said sincerely. Months later, Margaret and Dylan married, and she became a true Montgomery. The end. This is Mr. Hope. Thank you for watching.